Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Come on in, find your seats. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. My name is Mr. Regis, and I will be your instructor, your guest, your host for this interview. I'm a member of the Knowledge Fellowship, and the Knowledge Fellowship is an educational streamer collective, a group of educational streamers like the guest we will be having on in a little bit, ArtsyChickadee. But as you saw in those intro clips, and as you see on the screen right now, the Knowledge Fellowship has streamers from just about every topic, every kind of subject you can think of to learn about. You can find it there. And the reason we're having this seminar series is so that we can highlight some of our amazing educational streamers, like ArtsyChickadee, and like the others that we've had on in the past, like Mahoodles and Tiny Toxic Tofu. And we will be having many more great guests because we want to highlight all of these amazing educational streamers who are doing such great work in the streaming space. In a sea of, well, slop that's out there that people could watch, there is always someone from the Knowledge Fellowship stream team streaming something educational, informative, interesting, something fun that you can watch that you will actually learn from. You can check the stream team at this link right here. And I guarantee you, if you're bored, if you're thinking about watching another, well, TikTok reel, you can check out this instead. Trust me, you should. As you see all of the names scrolling across your stream right there, like Nerduino, like the SETI Institute, Tiny Toxic Tofu. You can watch things about cooking, practical crafts. You can watch pottery streams. You can watch streams about coding and technology. You can get math help from our very own e to the 2i pi. That's right, you can get help with your math homework and other subjects that you might want to learn about. There are streamers dedicated just to things like, well, office hours. Or you can watch people play video games and talk about history. There are historians playing video games that you can watch. You can learn practical technology. One of my favorites that I've just started with is Mr. Horologist, the watchmaker, watch repairer that you saw there. Fascinating that you can just watch someone repair and make watches on Twitch. Extremely good comfort watching, trust me. Or you can watch music streams, DJs. There's so much that you can watch and learn from in the Knowledge Fellowship. And you can become a member of the Knowledge Fellowship. Our Discord is open to anyone. You can jump on in, meet new people, meet educational streamers, people with some incredible resumes, to be honest with you. People that I feel a little bit intimidated by, but honestly, they're fantastic, very approachable. And if you are an educational streamer yourself, if you stream anything about education in a field that you are interested in or have expertise in, you should suggest yourself for membership. We have an open application that you can find in our Discord, which is also open to anyone, and there will be a link to that Discord, I'm sure, in the chat very shortly. But I want to delay no longer. I want to bring in our fantastic guest, ArtsyChickadee. And there we are. Welcome. Welcome, ArtsyChickadee. Thank you so much for taking time to be a part of our seminar series. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. How about the rest of the viewers? How about the rest of the class? Can you hear ArtsyChickadee?
When we were back doing pandemic teaching, I'll be like, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
Sounds like we've got audio. Fantastic. So, I know you, but maybe people in the class don't know you yet. So, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay, I am ArtsyChickadee. By day, I am a art teacher. I teach elementary art in an urban elementary in the Midwest. And I am also in a doctoral program. I am in the middle of getting my doctorate in basically dramatic arts and really arts-related research. But as a side interest, I have been fascinated with the kind of the history of where our pigments come from and the history of basically paint. And I've been kind of interested in it ever since I started painting seriously about 5 years ago.
Okay. So you are a streamer too. So tell me a little bit about that decision, your choice to also bring your art interest to the streaming world.
Well, several years ago, I think it may have actually been 6 years ago now, a good friend of mine showed me Twitch. As I was sitting on his couch doing color swatches of the paints that I had just bought. And he told me, he's like, some people would watch you do that. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, no, people would watch you do that online. And then he showed me Twitch, and he believed in me so much that he went ahead and bought me a Yeti mic. And so I took that as an opportunity to share what I've learned with others. I usually do streams that involve my artwork of some sort. Either I'm doing watercolor painting, or recently I've been making some miniatures, like miniature, I guess you could say miniature houses, dollhouse type things. But I do all sorts of different artistic things. And my big thing is just come and watch me mess up, because it's going to be okay. I think a lot of times we put artists on a pedestal and that, oh, they never make a mistake. Oh, no. I make mistakes all the time. And I try to show my students, like, okay, yeah, I screwed that up, but if I learn from it, is it really that much of a mistake?
Yeah.
So that's
Happy
kind of what my
little
channel is about. Yeah.
Happy little accidents. Yes, fantastic. And yeah, there is a great art community in Twitch, in the live streaming space as well. And there are some great artists in the Knowledge Fellowship, like yourself. Minis, I think, are also a popular topic, but different kinds of minis, probably. I think we're talking probably Warhammer type minis. Not that I would know anything about that. But so you're also an art teacher. Tell me a little bit about that, actually, because I'm a teacher as well, although I teach health and physical education. But you and I are both classed in what most districts would call the specials, or the
Unified
others,
arts.
the miscellaneous, unified arts. So let's talk a little bit about that. What's it like being an art teacher in the urban schools?
Crazy, honestly. I started teaching about 16 years ago now, and I never thought that I would teach the little kids. I always figured that I was going to be teaching high school forever. And I was in one district teaching high school, and then because of some severe budget cuts from the state, I lost my job. And when they found some money and then they gave me my job back, it wasn't at the high school anymore. It was now at 3 middle schools. So I was at 3 middle schools every day, traveling from school to school to teach only 7th grade. And after a while, I just couldn't keep that up. So I quit, and then I applied in a different district, one that is a lot more urban. And this district where I am now, I feel like I'm more needed. It doesn't feel as much like the biggest decision my kids have isn't what pair of $300 shoes they're going to put on in the morning, because I don't feel like I can improve upon or impact that, whereas I can impact my students now. I spent one more year at high school, and then I went down to elementary because positions got eliminated, and so I wanted to keep a job. So I went from teaching high school, senior, advanced photography to kindergarten.
Yeah, budget cuts. I mean, which programs are the first to get cut? It's those very same things we're talking about. Despite the fact that all the research suggests that art, music, health, physical education, they have an enormous impact on every other subject. Students who get good health education, music education, PE, art, they score better on all of the other tests. It's a strange scenario. I wonder why kids would score better on their math scores if they were taking art classes and getting good physical activity. I just can't imagine why.
I don't know. Maybe it could have something to do with the fact that a lot of times kids are coming to school for those specials.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I made sure that I went to school every day, was so that I could go to my drama class, because I know if I missed drama class, I wasn't going to be able to be in the play.
Yeah. And the arts, I mean, they teach creative thinking, they teach abstract thinking. I think of music when parents will say, why do we have to fund music classes and why do we need to buy these instruments? Well, music teaches math. Music teaches mental reasoning. Art teaches out-of-the-box thinking, teaches you how to think in 3D. So yeah, definitely very important, and yet unfortunately some of the first to get cut. But art teachers like yourself, bringing that education to young people, I think your decision to go down to elementary, that does definitely have a big impact. Especially at the younger years, the research suggests that getting physical activity, getting art, getting music, when the brains are still in their fastest developing stages, that's going to have a huge impact. So you are having that big impact that you were hoping to get. So thank you very much for doing that.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I tell people I have the best job in the world, which I do. I get to play with kids and watercolors all day. It's not so much the art, it's the other parts of teaching that are very frustrating, like classroom management, budget cuts, not having materials. That's the struggling part. That's the frustrating part.
Well,
However,
you are also then able to bring some of that art education to streaming, and like you said, teaching people that it's okay to make mistakes. So what have you been working on most recently in your streams? What's the right now?
The right now, I have been working on a small, like, dollhouse miniature type thing that it was given to me by a fellow streamer for Christmas. Actually, it was a Secret Santa, and it's a DIY dollhouse of like a cozy bedroom or something, but it really forces me to be patient, and it forces me to pay attention to details and think things through before. Like, yes, there are directions, but they are not in English, and they are not the best pictures. So there's a lot of reasoning that happens with this kit and kits like it, and people get to see me swear.
Yeah, and people love that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other
My stream
thing
is not for kids.
Not for kids, no. Elementary school for kids. The ArtsyChickadee live streams for adults. One of the things that I've noticed a lot in the art streams or art world, because I stream as a VTuber, I'm exposed to a lot of people who are seeing art as a business, and it's sort of this cottage industry in streaming and in the Twitch space, in Twitter, where you constantly get DMs from artists or people proposing to be artists. That has been difficult, I think, for a lot of real artists to see that it gets this commodification and, the hustle culture that any hobby you have has to be turned into some profit creating effort. What do you think? What do you think we can do about that? Sort of change this perception that art as a hobby needs to be sort of monetized.
I don't. To be honest, to be fair, I'm not sure. When I first started streaming, I felt the need to very strongly to sell my artwork and sell the stuff and give it away and do raffles and stuff. And it became very stressful to try to get people to, like, I felt like I was getting people to buy things, and I was more selling myself, which I didn't like doing. But when I took a step back from that and remembered, like, I am just doing this because I want to, and I want people to see that it's okay to make mistakes and how you could fix them. Because that's one thing that, as I've been learning, there aren't a lot of avenues that you can go to and see people make mistakes and then fix them. You see the right way to do it all the time, and it's like, that's not helpful to someone who's starting out, because they need to know that it's okay, you're going to make a mistake. It's fine. We can fix it. So as far as the commercializing, I think it's because of social media, it's always going to be there. It's up to the individual artist to make the decision of whether to make that as a side hustle, which is fine, or make their craft purely artistic and for themselves.
Yeah, gone are the days where you could find a patron to pay you a stipend yearly to paint the Sistine Chapel or something. Now it's social media, and you have to hawk your wares, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and that's if you want to make it as a social media artist that makes their living through social media. I can't. I'm not mean enough. I am not cutthroat enough, and I need health insurance.
Yeah, that's important. I have to get my wisdom teeth pulled. I needed the dental.
Yeah. I mean, the days where I'm like really frustrated with the kids, I remember that, oh, right, I have a dentist appointment, or I need to get my eyes checked. Those things aren't cheap when you're hustling on your own.
Yeah, and they aren't, and your eyes and your teeth are not covered in health insurance. You need to get the dental and vision for some reason. That's crazy. Yeah, your teeth are not part of
And
your body.
without my eyes, not very good artist.
You're not, right, right. Yeah, I think a lot of the aspiring young artists who do want to make it a career, they don't really have the business sense or the understanding that, hey, you're doing contracted work now. You know, it's a different world than just doing it for fun, and you're gonna, like you said, lose the interest. It's not fun anymore. You're not doing it for, your enjoyment, your enrichment, which is what art is for.
They're also the whole taxes idea, which I'll be honest, I am not a math person. I can do math. I can do my own taxes. I get a bit of a math phobia, stemming from when I was in school, and because of that, the whole tax situation of when you are selling your own stuff, that's a whole nother level. Like, that's requiring an accountant.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a whole lot of other things to take into consideration. Even if you do want to just make it as a streamer, there's a lot of things to do. So art and stream combined, yeah, you're gonna have to learn how to do some financial planning as well.
Yeah, I had
But
to do a lot of learning when I first started my channel because didn't know anyone who was doing it, and I had no idea what I was doing. But I remember I started with that Yeti mic and my cell phone, and that was what I started with.
that's all you need. If you're doing something like this, people are gonna find you. You're gonna find your audience. So I think with that, we've had a great little introductory conversation, but I think the viewers would love to hear your presentation. So why don't we head over to the presentation screen and you can share what you're doing. There we go. So you can feel free, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Oh no, oh dear. Well, one of the things that I am very passionate about is, and more like I became a curiosity that almost became, I won't say an obsession, but sure, we'll call it that, was finding out where our pigments have stemmed from, because we didn't always just have them, and a lot of our pigments that we use in commercial stuff today is not from nature. It is chemical compounds, um, and there has been a lot that has gone into making those chemical compounds safe and inexpensive, because it's kind of like that idea of you can have it safe, you can have it inexpensive, you can have it fast. You can only choose two of the three. It could be safe and fast, but it ain't gonna be inexpensive. It could be inexpensive and safe, but it's not gonna be fast. So I was just fascinated trying to find out, because there's always like this um, there's this idea that happens among watercolorists that when you need to sharpen the point of your brush, for example, here's the point of my brush, and to make that super pointy while I'm painting, artists have always put it in their mouth to get the tip to be that nice point. And I saw a watercolor artist do that, and I was shocked. Like, you are putting paint in your mouth. What are you doing? Because now, if it's paint like your Crayola paint that you give kids, it's not going to hurt you. However, professional watercolors are made with chemicals, and they are not meant to be put onto any of your mucosal surfaces. I don't even know if I said that right, but it doesn't matter. So I wanted to find out, like, what are people putting in their bodies, and it started with that, and then it kind of went from there. At least we got rid of the lead mostly. Oh yes, but lead was just the beginning. There has been arsenic in our paint. There's been lead, but also some of the places that these other pigments have come from, I don't know that people have really grasped the concept of where they came from. Originally, our first pigments were from the ground, and it was basically mud they got from the ground that dried out, and they used it on the caves. And then they would put it in a fire and burn it, and it would be a slightly different color of dirt. They would use that. And here I'm going to put my disclaimer in. I am not a scientist. I don't even pretend to be a scientist. This is just a fascination of mine. So if, I have plenty of resources that I use, but if there is a scientist out there who give information that I get incorrect, I welcome that. Because again, I make mistakes. And I figure we're all learning. So back to like the cave painting, the beginnings. All of those pigments were made of the ground, stuff that they could easily find on the ground, and which is amazing that some of those cave paintings have lasted as long as they have, with literally just burnt levels of dirt and mud. That's what's been on those walls, and it has survived centuries. Now we started getting a little bored with just our colors, with just browns. So I actually have I have about 7 books here. I'm only slightly obsessed. But I did want to like just run through what these are, so that if people wanted to check them out on their own, they could. This first one is Chromatopia. Oh, good. It doesn't do it backwards. Yay. Chromatopia by David Coles. And this one is fabulous. It has amazing photography for each of the different colors. And I appreciate that these photos are very well done. Then I have this one is called Colors by Anne Verichon. I believe that's how you say her name. And this one more specifically talks about the pigments that are used in certain paintings and certain applications. Then there's The Brilliant History of Color in Art. And I love this one. It's by Victoria Finley. And this one I'm actually going to reference quite a bit in our talk. Also, amazing pictures. But really goes into the true history of like, where did we start from and where have we ended up? This one, Little Artist, Little Book of Color. And then, which I just like because it's a little paperback, but it's something that I can show my students without, because this kind of like these bigger books, they aren't very child friendly. Big words. Couldn't find the Anne book. Anne Verichon. It's Colors, What They Mean, and How to Make Them. And by, looks like Abrams Books. I can also put links to these in the Discord later. And then the last one is Periodic Tales, A Cultural History of the Elements from Arsenic to Zinc. Because so many of our pigments are chemical compounds. And I want to show, there's a short YouTube video where I'm going to show, if I can get it to work. Let's see here. Mr. Aegis, are you able to switch me over to... Oh, wait, I have to do it. I have to share my screen. Okay, sorry. Sorry, y'all. That's not it. Okay. Hopefully this is loud enough. Okay.
Inside the Harvard Museum, just beyond the serene interior, a back wall awash in vibrant, sometimes muted, and often mesmerizing colors.
See, look at this one.
An enchantment of more than 3,000 powdered pigments. But this is not an exhibit. It's a rare library of sorts, complete with a card catalog of colors.
So a pigment is a colored particle that is used to give color to paint. And it can come from plants, it can come from animals, it can come from minerals, it can come from a chemistry lab.
The keeper of the keys, if you will, to the Forbes pigment collection, Narayan Kandakar.
It was put together by Edward Forbes, who is the second director of the museum. He was very, very interested in understanding how a work of art is made, what it's made of.
Edward Waldo Forbes spent a great deal of his 30-plus years at the museum building the base for what you see today.
So the collection grew in this slightly haphazard but increasingly well-known way.
While many of the earliest pigments were derived from accessible nature,
if you've ever stumbled on ochres on the ground, it's an amazing sight. If you take an insect that lives on an oak tree, you can squash it and extract a bright red color. And that color is called kermes, which is the origin of the color crimson.
Others have been extracted in interesting places.
This is the Indian yellow. It is the dried urine of cows fed only on mango leaves. One of the rare pigments that we have is one called Tyrian purple, and it comes from the murex mollusk. And there's a gland in the mollusk that secretes a liquid, and that's collected and exposed to the sun. And it goes from clear to red, blue, or purple. And to make about a gram of pigment takes something like 10,000 mollusks. People like Cleopatra would dye her barge sail purple. If you think about how many mollusks had to die to make her barge purple, that tells you she was the most important person in that country.
From pigments that date back thousands of years to one of the newest blue hues on the block, Yinmen, or Oregon blue.
It's not every day that something like this happens. That was the first new inorganic pigment that had been developed for about 200 years. Color's so important to people. It's been there right from the beginning. If you look at the oldest cave paintings, people who were doing these pictures weren't just using charcoal out of the fire.
This here is Egyptian blue, very first man-made pigment that we know of.
The pigments here are used by scientists and artists alike to find answers sometimes masked by history.
For me, it's completely indispensable because it forms our reference collection. We're comparing all of our samples that we take from artworks to it.
Pigments can reveal a fascinating story about art, help decipher real from fake, and even give clues to the geography of the time. A process now part of an exhibit at Harvard called Funerary Portraits from Roman Egypt, Facing Forward.
It's an exhibit about the Roman Egyptian funerary portraits in our collection, of which we have 5 painted panel portraits that are nearly 2,000 years old, and they were made to depict people that had died and to bring their identity into the afterlife. So they would have been attached to the mummified remains. Everything that we are able to learn about them, how they were made, and what materials were used to make them, we had to learn from the objects themselves, and that's what this show is about. It's about how we know what we know about the portraits. Well, a big part of that is what pigments were used.
With a mix of science and history, they are able to pull out the source materials of color. In this case, identify the roots Egyptians often used to make red.
One of the most exciting imaging techniques is to use ultraviolet radiation. This root system here, it's used to produce madder lake. It's pigment that's made from a red dye. UV conditions where the paint, it can look pink or red, and under UV it glows this bright orangey, and so you can diagnose it without having to touch the painting.
These masks contain a fascinating discovery, a material previously known to exist in Mars, but not on the palette.
Over here we have a mineral called allanite, and it's not something that's used nowadays as a pigment, but we found it in one of the portraits in our collection. Once we realized what it was, we talked to some of our other collaborators, and we've realized that other portraits in other collections across the world, they have this mineral too.
A toolbox with a window to the past, an idea of what an artist's studio may have looked like long before Newton's color wheel came along.
Yeah. So that was fascinating. Stuff that's not even from this planet, or we didn't think was on this planet even.
Yep. And they've had this kind of color library for decades now, but they actually had a pause that they had to do because of, I think it was because the person who originally started it died. And so there wasn't anyone to keep it up. But after 70 some years, they came back in. Someone like reinvigorated the library because they had to start adding in pigments that had been created since the museum had stopped collecting things. Um, some of the newest pigments are like that Oregon blue, which is called Yinmin blue, but also a pigment called Vanta black, which has a huge controversy behind it because there is one person who has the legal right to use Vanta black. He has paid for the rights to be the only person allowed to use it. And it's created with nanotube technology. Yes, it's Anish Kapoor, my old nemesis. Nice. Um, and I believe he's also the same artist who created the Bean in Chicago, but I could be wrong. But he is the only person who has the legal right to use Vanta Black. And it is the darkest black paint that exists. And it makes anything that it like is painted on look completely flat. It absorbs all light, or at least as much light as humanly possible at this point.
So that's like Martin Shkreli buying the Wu-Tang album and now no one can listen to it.
Kind of, yeah. But there is Stuart Semple is he is an artist who has started creating pigments of his own, and he decided that it wasn't fair that Anush Kapoor could like own a color, so he decided to try his hand at it, and he made what was called Black 2.0. And I have Black 2.0. It is incredibly dark and incredibly matte. But then they went back to the lab, produced another version, which is even darker, even more matte. That's Black 3.0. And they just recently came out with Black 4.0. So they keep improving the formula. But the biggest like thing that he wanted to do was, haha, Anish Kapoor. Oh, he also put on his bottles that to buy it, you have to promise that you are not Anish Kapoor. Because everyone else in the world is allowed to have it, and it's fairly affordable for what it is. Now, would I use it on every one of my paintings? No, but there are special applications where it really does make everything look completely flat. Oh yeah, and you will share or sell. You can't share or sell it to Anish Kapoor. Stuart Semple was he was pretty upset. In the meantime, he has also made a blue that is gorgeous. Is a very deep, rich blue. And he's also made a couple like fluorescent pigments that he also sells on his website. But Black 3.0, Black 4.0 are the like his main sellers, and what it started his original vindictiveness. I guess you could say, because he was
that's
like,
that's being a hater that I can really respect. That's a level of
I mean,
yeah,
because
I would do that to my ops.
He was like, what do you mean? What do you mean other people can't use? And the other interesting part is that Vanta Black is incredibly expensive to make because it was originally made for the military, and it had something to do with nanotube technology. I don't know enough about it, but I know that its original use was to basically paint on fighter jets so that nothing would bounce off of them, so they would be harder to see. So then he bought the rights to it so that no one could use it except him, which is stupid. But that's my own opinion. But zero is restricted to the world except for, pretty much.
Actual absolute zero in terms of color. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild because like I said, it's incredibly expensive to make because you are basically aligning nanotubes so that they are all standing up on their end. So on a molecular level. That's a lot. I'm not interested. I'll take Black 3.0.
Yeah, I mean, Black was so good they made Black 2.0. I mean, that's fantastic.
Right? and then 3.0, now 4.0. And I think what they're doing is with these improvements, they're making it um, vertically and aligned nanotube arrays. Yep, that sounds about right.
I thought it was just a
Um,
cool name.
Same. No, of course it's the military, so it's going to have a acronym. Um, but the improvements that they keep making, one of the improvements I know was that they made it smell better. Because some paints can have a really strong, noxious odor. So they made it smell better. They made it easier to clean up. And they made it more uh, stronger, basically tougher, so that it wouldn't scratch off as easily. So that's what they keep doing with these improvements. Uh, I just think it's hilarious that someone could be like that vindictive against a person for a color.
So
But the fact
when
that that person was like that this color is mine and no one else can have it, that's
deserved,
ridiculous.
deserved. At what number do you think we'll get to the black that you can paint on a wall and the coyote runs into it?
How many coyotes are near walls?
Well, there's just the wily one. So we're looking at what
Oh, we're
point do we
there.
get to the black where we're there?
We're there. We are there.
Not human drivers,
There.
because they'll drive into something that doesn't even look that dark. But I mean, like,
No.
yeah,
Yeah. No, it's
Who Framed Roger Rabbit type.
there are some YouTube videos that show basically they took like a model of a horse head and they painted it in one of them in white so you can see all the shadows and all the curvature, and the other one in Vanta black, and only on one side. So when you turn it, you can see that it's three-dimensional, but when they turn it back, it looks like a black hole. Like nothing it's fascinating. Um, Now, do I think that it probably has some more improvements? Yeah, sure. But for the hobbyist, it's great. Especially if someone is trying to like black out all the way around something and focus on an image in the middle. It does a really good job of getting all of that extra light and noise out of the way.
Yeah, adding that to
So,
the artist's toolbox, that's a whole new way that creative people can do all kinds of cool stuff.
and I've seen many miniature artists, and I'm talking about like Warhammer creators and people that do that kind of terrain-based stuff, painting it on the sides of their models so that the eye is drawn to what they actually created instead of the structure that is holding the whatever the terrain is. Um, it's I just find it fascinating. Um, so some of the other pigments that I find that are a little more unusual, they actually alluded to in that clip. One of them is Indian yellow, and when I found out about Indian yellow, I was disgusted. Um, I want to make sure I get this right. Like I said, they talked about it in the video that it was originally made from the urine of cows fed only mango leaves. Gross.
Yeah,
Like that to me is just
that doesn't
and
seem
that's what
fair
they
to the
used to
cow either. You're only
it
getting one source of food.
well they actually had to it is now I mean it is now illegal as of about 70 80 years ago. um they made it so that in the original formulation of Indian yellow is illegal because it was unfair to the cows. Um, but now, like we have come up with chemical ways to make a similar yellow. Um, but I've also read that, and I don't know how much basis I put in, but I've heard also camels that were fed only mango leaves. But that ball that he had, that dried pigment, is basically the dehydrated urine that was collected.
Yeah. I mean,
And
urine
then
has
they
had its
would,
uses in history, but I mean, there's the saying, don't have a pot to piss in.
yeah. And there were some really beautiful things that have been painted with that really it's like a fluorescent yellow. It's incredibly bright. And like Van Gogh's flowers were often done in that Indian yellow. Uh, and we now use different chemicals to make that kind of yellow so that the poor cows can have more than mango leaves. And we don't just sit around catching their pee.
Well, not recreationally, at least.
Let's just hope we don't. But we're gonna say they don't. Um, but another one that is I find fascinating. Professional watercolor. It comes in tubes or pans, but my preference. So this is by a brand called Daniel Smith, and they are one of the premier brands of watercolor. Yeah, I don't think you can see that. Whatever. And that company has been one of the premier brands for decades. Some of the colors that they have are there's just an interesting way that they used to be made. Some of them all of them list their chemical compound on them. Like this particular one has it's quinacridone violet, and it's basically the pigment mixed with gum arabic. And most of them are pretty normal. Like this one's just this one's red pigment, this one's blue pigment. There is a tube of paint. It's now called mummy bauxite, and it was originally back around the turn of the century. It was made. It was also it's mummy bauxite, also called corpus mortem. It was made with pieces of mummy.
Yeah,
was
they loved
ground
mummy
up.
back then. A lot of people ate mummies back then in Europe.
Yeah. Well, and they also would have mummy parties where they'd like all be around in the salon and they'd unwrap a mummy. But they had to stop making mummy bauxite out of mummy
That's
because
an
they started running
unboxing I don't want to be a part of.
Nah. They started running out of mummy bits.
Not a renewable resource.
No, not so much. There are still a few pieces of mummy still left in that library of colors that we saw earlier, but it is now made with totally different materials, which thank goodness. And it was at the time a really, really well loved brown, but gross. So it is kind of, I find it amusing, like looking at it now, like, oh, this color used to be made of bits of people. Gross. And you're putting that paintbrush in your mouth.
Now it's a little bit worse than, the red dye number 5 that's in your crab rangoon sauce.
Exactly. That whole new level of. There's also been, and it might be an urban legend, but no. There was green paint has arsenic in it. Had arsenic in it. Doesn't have it anymore. But it looks like the Emperor Napoleon had it in his study, and that may have caused him to go a little maybe make some choices that he wouldn't have made if he were totally sane. Now that could be urban legend, but I don't know. I find that fascinating. And they have also said, as far as like poisonous, like we know that lead in paint, not good. It gets lead poisoning, and then there are downsides to that. It was often said that Van Gogh would go hungry to buy paint. He would rather buy paint than buy food. Some people like misunderstood that as to he was eating his paint. Well, no, he wasn't like just sitting there squirting it on eating his paint. But inevitably, if you're not careful, you get paint on your hands. If you don't do a good job of cleaning up, you're going to end up with it in your system. And he did a lot of lead-based painting. And there's theories that that may have led to some of his mental instability that he suffered from. Because if you weren't eating actual food, you were starving, but you made sure you bought this lead-based paint.
Yeah. Good reminder, everyone. Class, wash your hands. 1 in 3 people don't wash their hands after they use the restroom. Don't be one of those people. We touch our faces hundreds of times a day. Whatever is on your hands will get into your mucous membranes. Please wash your hands. And you
So-
work with kids. You know what I'm talking about.
So yeah, I had a kid this week just use me as a jungle gym, and now I'm great, awesome, love that for.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time before I'm sick. Like it happens every year, multiple times a year. So give those teachers that you know out there, give them hand sanitizer and emergency.
Oh, they
they'll need
tested the testes of Napoleon to find that. To see if it was high in arsenic by modern standards. They found it was high before that wallpaper was in his house.
Okay.
Oh, so he was getting the wallpaper into his testicles long before that. I'm not going to speculate how.
You know, I mean, if nothing else, it's a fun anecdote.
Fun tidbit, yeah. Hey, did you know about Napoleon? And then I wonder why people don't talk to me at the party.
And also, like, hey, maybe we should stay away from arsenic.
Yeah, generally.
Just a thought. Crazy.
Oh, tested, not testes. Sorry, Big Tuna Neil. That was maybe the best typo we've had so far yet. So thank you very much for that. See, no mistakes, just happy accidents.
Beautiful.
No one saved his testes. I was thinking, like, is that where it like collects? Like, is that where we would check?
I'm gonna leave that to the professionals.
Yeah.
No one saved his test. No one was testing his testes that we know of. Anywho, and that's how everybody left the stream.
Well, that's when it gets exciting, when the mistakes.
Oh yeah, happen. That's the point. That's a good point. So I'm looking here. There are 3 big old books that you can get online from the where is this? National Gallery of Art in London that are basically encyclopedias of the history of paints. Sorry, I just got a message from Sage. Oops, forgot what time it was. So anyways, it is a brief history of color in art. And they are it goes very deep in depth of not only where the pigments came from, but also where you find them today. One of the big important things about finding these minerals and chemicals in paint is we can do basically like what amounts to carbon dating of paintings. They have taken UV and infrared images of paintings to see if the paint that was used on it was old enough for that painting to have been done by a certain artist. For example, there was some Jackson Pollock paintings that they did this scan on, and they determined that one of the paints had not been created yet, and that he had died before it had been created. So these paintings were false. They were fakes. And someone was trying to sell them off as Jackson Pollock's. Turns out that everybody was exposed to large amounts of arsenic back then. Yes. So they are using these technologies to find out if paintings are forgeries or not, without having to actually touch the paintings. So I find that fascinating because it's like if the blue or the infrared shines a certain way on the painting, they can determine whether or not it has this chemical. They went back and forth on the Shroud of Turin as well. Yep. So that I think is fascinating because then you can basically forgery is one of the largest money makers in the world, and it has been for centuries. There's a reason the Mona Lisa has been stolen 3 times, at least. Um, Other things that they talked about in that video was the color of Tyrian purple, and it came from the mucus of mollusks. Ew, first of all. Why are we using the snot of mollusks? Mollusks? Um, and it would take thousands to make enough purple to dye something. So like what they were saying was like if Cleopatra had her sails dyed purple, hundreds of thousands of snails would have had to been used to create those sails. I want to know who the people are that had to collect the snail snot.
Yeah. And whatever happened to those sails? Just
Right?
gone. For
Right?
all those mollusks for what? For like maybe a few years worth of a cloth.
And that's another reason why purple is considered the color of royalty, because you had to be really, really rich to have something that was purple.
Yeah.
Like,
And
incredibly
two
rich.
says people wear the snot of mollusks. I mean, they eat mollusks. They'll eat
Yeah.
them. So, I mean, well, those are French people, so whatever.
I'm sure you could find those dye markers by their smell. Yes, except they'd probably be dead. I guess they're dead.
And then they would be
But
mummies.
also,
And then you could extract the color from their mummies.
there you go, and then you could have corpus mortem. Um, Another thing that I find fascinating is the color blue. Was originally one of the sources of it was lapis lazuli, and it only came from one area of the world, caves in Afghanistan, and those minerals, those gemstones, were ground down and mixed in with the gum arabic to form the paint. Um, but incredibly expensive, and that's why a lot of older paintings, older portraits, you'll see you won't see a whole lot of blue unless the person that they are painting was either royalty or had a lot of money. But they would also save it for the Virgin Mary to kind of show honor, because if you use one of the most expensive paints to show that this is the Virgin Mary, that was a way of um, honoring your painting. Trying to think, I actually have some paint that has lapis in it. Um, it is incredibly expensive because it's actually there are a few pigments that I have that are basically gemstones that have been ground down. I have a garnet, I have the lapis, um, a bronzite, tiger eye. There's a couple other ones, but they are like the most expensive because they're literal actual gemstones that are being ground down. Um, they're gorgeous. They're beautiful. I have one that's amethyst, and it's one of those that I have to use very special reason. Like it has to be a special occasion to use those. Um, so I want to open up to any questions that anyone has about pigments, what we've talked about already. Um, we can ask more about the snot of mollusks. I don't care. But what are questions that people have that I might be able to answer?
Yeah, while we're waiting, I mean, it's one of the things that interested me is a friend of mine learned Japanese and moved to Japan to become a translator. And he said, you know that they call green blue in Japan? I was like, what? No. And I looked it up, and their traffic lights are blue, yellow, and red, but they still call them green
Oh, that's
because they
weird.
just didn't have a word for green. And so they just called green things blue. So the intersection of like language and culture is really interesting too. Um, and I'm not going to rhyme orange. I'm not M&M. I can't do that. It isn't an English word. That's true. I mean,
Orange.
English, yeah, English, I don't know. We call things pineapple, and that doesn't make any sense. Nobody else does that. Pale blue is a separate color in Japanese. Yeah, it's just weird. Like all their traffic lights are blue for go.
That's
Yeah, language and color.
yeah.
Then there's the like
And
cultural associations of like what colors mean to different people.
yes, they, red in the United States is usually seen as either harsh or authoritarian or even death. And in, I believe it's China, it's a celebratory color that they often wear during weddings. Blue, green, reading that cultures without different words for like red, orange, and yellow have a harder time distinguishing those colors, like how I see salmon and shout out that it's just pink. That is a very good point. So one of the things that I've had to kind of train myself to do over the years is I try to be very good at discerning different colors. Um, and there are some people that is a not just a skill, but they physically can't do that. I have a few students who are colorblind, and they have let me know, which I appreciate them telling me that they are colorblind ahead of time, so that I can find out ways to teach them about color that doesn't put them in a deficit. Because you've got people who they can't see red, or they can only see dull red. They can't see a bright red. So if I make an activity, say, and they have to find the red one as enough in a bunch of colors, not really fair to that kid because they can't see the red.
Yeah.
So I basically I've done a combination of color with shape, because I also have a lot of students who don't speak any English at all. How do I learn basic color theory? It depends on, I mean, that kind of depends on what you want to know. If it's just color mixing, there are thousands of videos. But also, if you want to know the difference between the subtractive and the additive mixing of colors, the difference between mixing light and mixing paint, because they're different. It's red, blue, and green for light, versus red, yellow, and blue for paint. And actually, I would argue that it's more cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. Because growing up, we were told like the three primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. You can't make red, you can't make yellow, you can't make blue. But you can with cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Which I didn't believe until I actually did it. Like I actually took pure cyan, pure magenta, and I made red. So my printers come in those colors? Yes. Knowing which colors complement each other. So you're saying, Darth, if I'm understanding, like if I'm wearing a red shirt, to know what colors go well with it? Because there's complement and then there's complement. Compliment with an I is, oh, you look so nice today. Compliment with an E is the opposite end of the spectrum, or the opposite end of the color wheel, which would make something pop. I got lost. I can't see colors properly because of my age and crappy implanted lens. Oh, sorry, mouse. A basic color wheel that was basically pretty much invented by Newton forever ago, has the complement colors opposite each other on that wheel. I always talk about it with my kids. I actually remind them of the pears, red and green. Think of Christmas. purple and yellow, think of the Lakers. Orange and blue, think of the Gators. And that helps them to remember the pairs. And I tell them that if you put the complement colors together, if you mix them, you'll get brown. Because in theory, since like if I'm doing red and green, red primary, green is a mixture of yellow and blue, which are the two primaries. So basically, when you mix red and green, you're mixing all three colors together and getting brown.
Yeah.
Interesting way to talk about it. Like, I have to do what makes sense for my students. I also do quite a bit of interpretive dance with my students.
I'm glad you mentioned sports teams, because you could have said purple and yellow for the Vikings and orange and blue for the Bears, and as a Packers fan, I couldn't have abided that. But I did do a lesson recently on, I ranked with another streamer the NFL uniforms, and we talked a lot about color. And talked about a few studies where certain colors were found to get penalized more.
Yeah.
Either because they were deemed to be more aggressive subjectively in the eyes of the referees, or they popped more, they appeared more visually stimulating to the referee's eyes when they see their hands grab the jersey of the other player.
Yep.
So a lot of applications for understanding color and color theory.
Oh, yeah. And so Darth, I'm saying, like, if I'm doing some graphic design, knowing which text color goes with which background color, and that also depends on what you want the effect to be. Because if you want the effect to be calming, having colors that are closer to each other on the color wheel will give a more calming effect. If you want it to be jarring, then picking the ones on the opposite side of the color wheel will make them pop. And if you're not careful, they almost can vibrate with how different they can be. And it's not an exact science. A color palette generator helps quite a bit. I also use a website called Canva, Canva. I use it for creating everything for my classroom, posters, worksheets. But it does a good job of giving examples of color mixes that look good together. There's also it's not quite a book. It's more of their flashcard type of things, the color cube. And every card inside this box is another set of colors that go well with each other. And it has like it has an example of beautiful background picture that those colors have been pulled from. I think the woman's name is Sarah Clark, who created it. And they're just it's a nice, easy cheat sheet kind of way of being like, oh, that pink goes with that purple, goes with that blue. That looks really nice together, as opposed to this pink looks awful with that green. Refactoring UI. Oh, building your color palette.
So there's psychological stuff to it too. I mean, like the perception of pink and blue being girl and boy colors when those used to be the opposite. Now we see pink and psychologically we think that's more feminine, even though that used to be the opposite. So yeah, even, what colors complement each other, like, is the viewer going to see pink as something other than what you're intending as the artist?
Right. Well, and like they've done studies on like why McDonald's, their colors are red and yellow. They are very bold. They are almost jarring. And both of those colors together don't make you kind of want to sit and hang out. They kind of make us want to keep moving. So that gives a higher turnover for the tables. Back when it was more customary to go and sit down in a restaurant, which I don't know if I've sat in a McDonald's in years. But back when it was important to turn the tables, that red and yellow kind of gave it instead of a kind of chill vibe, it was more of a exciting vibe of a bit, kind of hopefully influence you to eat your food faster and get going. You notice Starbucks, you're not going to find red and yellow together very often. If you do, it's going to be like maybe a more muted red and maybe a more like golden yellow. They're a little more calm, not quite as jarring.
They want you to stay and buy as many coffees and donuts as they can.
Yes, and also like Burger King with their orange. Orange is also a color that has been studied that to make people hungry. So it is it perfect? No, but
Yeah, and then Prism's doing the opposite with as many calming colors on the walls as they can, and those muted greens, those very light kind of greens that they do. Schools will sometimes also, some of it is unknown how effective it is, but there are colors people think improve people's learning. Hard to judge that, though.
I have some firsthand experience. They came in a few years ago, and some of the teachers at the time in my school got to pick the color for their room. However, I don't think they did any research. One room was baby bubblegum pink. And this was a first grade classroom. The other first grade classroom was like a deep, it wasn't really deep, it was a teal blue. It was very bright. So those were the two first grade classes. And both colors were very jarring. And the kids that year were very overstimulated.
Those would be distracting colors.
Yeah. And they actually had to turn both rooms into completely different spaces. They are no longer first grade classrooms because of the behaviors that were coming out of those students. Now, could there have been other reasons? Absolutely. That pink is awful. And they won't come back to paint it unless someone pays them a lot of money to do it. So, because we've actually been talking about what other colors we can paint in the building that would have a more calming effect. My room right now is a lovely shade of ecru. Hate it. But when they finally do come to paint it, I've had to be very clear, like, I don't want it to be a bright color. I want it to be almost a soft gray. Something that is not so bright that it's going to overstimulate them. But also, because I'm an art teacher, my posters, my visuals, they are colorful. I'd rather put them on a muted background.
Yeah, you want them to pop on the muted background.
Right, rather than have bright on bright on bright on bright on bright on bright, because I don't need to have them any more ramped up than they already are. Because they all get excited when they come to art class. It's freedom! Like, just sit down. But we have noticed like almost a behavioral shift in classrooms that were changed to a different color from the lovely ecru color.
Yeah, I think inside, that's where you want the calming colors. Outside, you can have nice, bright, inviting,
Fine, that's great.
Keep the inside.
That's where you can have red and yellow.
Yeah.
Have your red and yellow outside.
Make that your team colors, because then red will make your sports team more aggressive and play better. Use the other psychological aspects of color.
Yeah.
I don't want the kids excited and aggressive in the art class or the PE class or the health class.
No, thank you.
Make the math teachers deal with that.
Right?
Put the math class in that bubblegum pink.
I think Pi is twitching right now.
Good.
Wait,
yeah, there we are.
Did I call it or did I call it? And there's a lot of studies done about like what colors will overstimulate small children. We're talking like pre-K and even babies. How it used to be funny how the chat is blue and purple. Well, yeah, because it's TKF colors.
Yeah.
So for babies and those who are just starting to recognize shapes and objects and the object permanence, it used to be, I mean, if you think back to back when I was a kid, like all the toys for babies were bright colors. They were like bright red, bright yellow, bright orange.
The play school
Uh,
toys with the bright
yeah,
red, yeah.
yes. Now, part of that is because I wonder if it's cheaper to make them that way. But that's what was associated with small children, primary colors, red, yellow, blue. Now they're being like, oh, this might not be the best for the small children. Maybe we need to not overwhelm them so much. So you'll see a lot of children's toys are now calm, like muted colors, very pastel. But also the very first months or so, a lot of toys I'm seeing are black and white. Um, because they found that it's harder for children that age to see differences in shades. They can see differences in black and white.
So
But
the Tool
they're
song was correct. Black and white are all I see in my infancy, red and yellow. You know the whole deal. I'm sure there's lots of metalheads in this TKF chat.
Absolutely.
Anyway, go ahead.
But then they because the muted colors are harder for them to discern differences at first, because the cones in their eyes have not yet really been developed yet. So a lot of really early toys are black and white. But then they start going into the more muted tones. What are the best books for teaching art to those who prefer a more methodical approach? It's a good question. And see, for me, it's experimenting. It's not so much a book, because so much of what I've learned about color and color theory has been screwing it up and then figuring out how to fix it. That's been, I'd say, 90% of the color theory that I've learned is throwing something together, realize it's ugly, figuring out what I need to do to fix it. And forcing myself to think, like if let's say I've got a color that I'm mixing a brown, we'll say, and the brown looks more like a Butterfinger when I want it to look more like a nice dark brownish red brick. I have to sit there and think, okay, if the one is a Butterfinger, the Butterfinger has more yellow in it. But if I want it to be more brick color, I need to add more of that red to darken it, to make it deeper. Because if I keep adding yellow, I'm just going to keep making it look more and more like baby poop. I picked up a famous book, Drawing with the Right Brain. Well, I didn't connect to it at all. Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain is a fabulous book. I cannot remember the author, but the activities that she has a person go through, the concept, it goes back to that, like how there's right brain and left brain, and how apparently the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body, left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, but also that the different hemispheres control different aspects of your, like the what is it, the right side of the brain is or the left side of the brain is supposedly more mathematical and language based. The right side is more creativity and spatial awareness. I don't remember if they've debunked that or not. However, what that author does is she gives exercises and activities that people can try that will take them from just doing things the way that they think it should be done to doing it how it actually looks. So, for example, if I have a picture of whatever, I have a portrait, and I want to draw the portrait, instead of drawing exactly what I think I see, turning the portrait upside down, turning my paper upside down, and drawing it that way, because my brain stops associating with this shape is a nose, this shape is a cheek. I know that an eyeball should look like this, and it turns it more into your brain going, oh, that is a football shape. That is a triangle. That right there is a little L shape. Instead of naming it what it actually is, your brain goes into more of a spatial awareness. And they found that people, when they flip it back right around, they feel that it's a much better representation of what they were trying to draw, just by looking at it through a different lens, just looking at it from a different vantage point. And that's one thing I've showed my students for years, because many times kids will get frustrated. They're like, it doesn't look the way I want it to. It doesn't look the way I want. I'm like, all right, draw it upside down. And they look at me like I'm crazy. But then when they do it, when they actually try it, and they're like, why did that work?
You had to
For me,
gaslight your
throwing
brain
color,
into forgetting. Yeah.
yes. For me, throwing color around might work, but copying drawings isn't going to fly. And if copying drawings is not what you're looking for, then no, that won't work. All, and it is a little off topic, but all artistic talent is really just practice. And those who are really good at, let's say, drawing, they have practiced so much that it looks like it's a gift, when in reality they just continue to practice so much that it becomes another part of their, like an extension of themselves. Same thing with painters. They've tried it so many times, they've practiced it so many times, it becomes second nature. It's just like a basketball player shooting free throws. It comes to be a point where it's no longer, I have to, this is what I have to do. I have to set up like this. It becomes, oh, I just do this. And they're making buckets all day long. Because I have a lot of people who are like, oh, I can't draw. I can't, like, yet. There are tricks that we can use to basically retrain our brain. Because from the very beginning, we are told that we are basically said that things look a certain way. Even as a baby, you start to realize that a face looks a certain way. Nose is here, eyes are here, mouth is there. And so we tell ourselves, well, that is a face. I see that as a face, so I must be able to draw that face. But we're naming the pieces, we're naming the parts. It's hard for us to take a step back and being like, oh, this is a C shape right here, this nasolabial fold right here. Now, some people it's not as pronounced as mine is, but these are two diagonal lines. Whereas I could be trying to draw a cheek. If I look at focus on, okay, that's a diagonal line, then it becomes easier for my brain to draw it and make it look like what I want it to. If I sit there and go, oh, I'm drawing a cheek. Okay, well, what does a cheek look like? How do you draw a cheek? So there are tips and tricks that you can learn to help you cheat the system. But it's just, like I said, it's the same as if you were throwing basketball hoops, if you were shooting hockey pucks, if you were learning to ride a bike. When you start riding a bike, you don't know what the heck you're doing. You fall over, you get back up. You fall over again, you get back up. You realize that you can't wear sandals, that you have to wear real shoes when riding a bike, or that you can't just run over a bunch of sticks, that might end up with getting you in an accident. But you get back up and you try again, and eventually riding a bike becomes second nature.
Yeah.
So yeah,
80-year-old
drawing ground color may not work.
80-year-old Bob Cousy in that movie, casually just sinking free throws over and over because he's been shooting free throws for 70 years. Yeah, of course it's going to look effortless.
Yeah. And now, granted, there are those who have a bit of an advantage. Shaq being, what, 6'11" or whatever, he's a little closer to the hoop. But at some point, he had to start off with, okay, I have to stand here. I have to have my feet this direction. I have to have my hand in this particular position on the ball for it to go where I want it to go.
Yeah, and maybe that's why he was so bad at free throws. He was too close. He was just throwing it like that. Yeah, some people, I mean, they might just have the finger dexterity. I had a cerebellar aneurysm from COVID. So it's like I have to be more precise with my fine motor control, but it doesn't mean that I couldn't draw. It doesn't mean that I can't do it. I would just need to work harder.
And some people don't want to, and that's fine. Maybe people don't want to learn to draw. That's fine. If it does not interest you,
Yeah.
I'm not going to push you. Like,
Just pay your artist
from
to do it for you, but actually pay them properly for their labor because they had to work for many years to get that good.
right. Like, I mean, for example, I have no interest in learning how to throw a better free throw. None. That's not my path. I could learn, but I don't want to. If someone doesn't want to learn how to draw a horse, then having them continually beat their head against the wall trying to do it when it's not something they're interested in, it literally is beating a dead horse.
Yeah. If they don't want to draw horses, but they like they can just go play that Uma Musume game. If they can get their horse fixed from someone else doing all the horse drawings. If you don't want to shoot free throws, you can just buy a ticket, hopefully not to the Lakers, but to a good team, and watch someone else do that work.
Yeah, this is why we have professional sports, because I let them do it. I don't do it.
Yeah. That's why we have professional artists, because the art is just as necessary.
There is something that I've been trying to impress upon my students lately. Now it's a new year, so I do feel like the new year is kind of a new start. And for the last few years, my classroom has not been a place where it's like, okay, here's the project we're going to do. Now you go do it. So that I get 30 copies of the same thing. Because that kind of drives me crazy. Seeing all the same snowman at night, it annoys me. Because that doesn't show me any creativity. That doesn't show me any individual thought. Now, there are those who would argue with me that well, then they don't have anything to show, and they're just practicing. And it's like, but what's wrong with that? Because we practice math problems, we practice writing sentences. We do practice other. It can be practice. It can be trying it, seeing if it works, and trying something different. And one thing that I'm having to do with my students is show them that it's okay to try something and screw up. And to be all right with that, because a lot of times kids that I've taught have been they get so bent out of shape when they make a mistake because they feel that it's almost like a personal attack, that they must be a less of a person because they made a mistake. And that breaks my heart, especially when it's something as simple as like they just 2 + 2 = 5 at that point, and they were like, I don't know why it doesn't make sense. So that's why I'm trying in my class at least, to be like, go ahead and screw up. I've actually encouraged some of them. I want you to try and make the biggest mistake you can on this paper, on this project. Make the biggest mistake you can. That is freeing in some ways, but also it's hard for them to make the biggest mistake ever, because to flip the concentration to I am trying to screw this up, and you realize that in trying to screw it up, it really didn't actually end up that bad in the first place. It's one of the hardest things for me. I make a mistake and I feel terrible, then I give up. Yes, Wes, I am same way. I was straight A student. I teacher's pet. If the teacher said I did something wrong, I was crushed. And I still get that way. If my administrator says I've done something wrong, I will internally, I will beat myself up. And it would be something simple as, hey, I noticed you've been late for work a couple times. Don't do that anymore. Not any sort of I'm not getting admonished. I'm not getting in trouble. But just that notification of you have done something that was not 100% correct. I feel like absolute garbage. That's my struggle that I've got to try to get out of that. So I don't want my students to feel that. because I know how crushing that is. It's awful. And I don't want them to feel that, especially at, 6, 7, 8 years old. They should be allowed to make mistakes because they're not going to learn if you don't make a mistake, you're not going to learn from it.
There's a little too much in the education world in assessments on a little too much emphasis on the production. What are you producing out of it? And I don't really think that works necessarily in art. It's because in art classes, it's not really about the final product. It's about the process. So process rather than product. Yeah, if you're in an advanced, like, doing a project, you do need to produce that statue or whatever that you're sculpting. But in those early stages, it's about process and practice
I love
rather than
the fact that my
product.
job is not tested. I am very blessed that they don't do testing for art. It would definitely kill a lot of the joy. Um, and but I feel like I have the freedom to help kids develop some of those skills that they don't have the luxury of developing in a math class or science class that is tested. Because they have so much pressure to get the higher score. But if we can come up with problem solving solutions in a non-threatening way, then they can if they learn those skills with me or practice them with me, then they can take them to their other classes. They can take them to other parts of their lives. Let's see here. I explained today how to pronounce
Hetty?
oh, I don't even know. Is it Hetty or Heedy?
Hetty?
I need it in a sentence.
X-Talk programmer, the huge difference between preparing a person for the Dutch national exam and teaching a person Dutch. Yeah, that's exactly, I think, what we're talking about, the difference between product and the actual practice of speaking Dutch. There's a certain expectation of what you're supposed to reproduce on a test for an exam, and what are you actually going to be doing in practice in using it. Sounds like heady.
Heady.
Oh, something is very heady. It's very serious. Okay.
Yeah. Pi, thank you for acknowledging that standardized testing is not your favorite.
Yes. I have a skills-based class, what I teach. Health is a skills-based practice. Even in my live stream lessons, I'm not here to teach you facts and figures. People who do that, that's great. We're going to learn the skill of this health practice that we're going to be talking about.
And I don't want to go down too far deep down the rabbit hole, but many of those standardized tests are very biased. And also, there's a lot of where is the money going. For example, there are certain companies that produce the state mandated standardized tests, and those companies just also happen to produce textbooks that will help students to do better on those tests. So it's almost like, hey, you want to do well on this test, buy our curriculum, and that's a lot of money. And what is the end goal? Is the end goal so that they can show that 2 + 2 = 4? Is the end goal that they show that they can use the skills that they've learned in an actual real application?
Yep.
Or is it just so that somebody can have data to show to people who have money, look, see, it's working, therefore give us more money?
Yes, exactly. They are also a gatekeeper to, college. I worked at a local community college, and it was like, this is a school for technical jobs, for whether it's nursing or medical assistant or, construction or whatever. Having to pass a standardized exam, whether it's ACT, SAT, whatever, is that actually going to have any effect on whether they can do these hands-on skills-based jobs? Or is it just a gatekeeper to keep out people who don't do well on standardized tests when that won't matter? And people who want to do these jobs, dental hygienist, dental assistant, which are in short supply, is the standardized test the best measure of whether they can succeed in the program and thus in their job? Or is it just a way to get money And then if they don't pass it, they had to take it again, which is more money, and again, which
Mm-hmm.
is more money. And there's really no correlation in the end in the data analysis we were doing between what your score was on the standardized test and whether or not you would pass the class and then be a good whatever job you were wanting to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a whole lot of inequity in a lot of the questions that are in many of those standardized tests are not very culturally aware. Is that a good way to put it? They are very culturally biased towards one particular ethnicity and not others. And some of the vocabularies they use are words that one may not actually come across in some of our living situations. If you're in a highly urban area, you may not know what, right off the bat, you may not know what a tractor is. I'm thinking like real little kids. You may not know what a tractor is if you have never had an experience with one. But if that's on the test, that kind of caters a little bit to those who have had experience with that. I could go down a rabbit hole. I won't. Because there's a lot of inequities across the testing sphere. Again, that's why I am so glad that I am not a tested subject, because I almost feel like I get away with being able to teach skills that are not necessarily testable. It wouldn't. You can't test creativity with pen and paper. You can't test. It's hard to test problem solving with a standardized test. AP Studio Art tries. That's a good point. Now, remember, I teach little ones. I have that luxury. I never taught AP Studio Art. I don't think I'd be a very good studio art teacher. I also didn't take a single class of art in high school, which I found it funny when I taught high school art that I had never taken the class that I was teaching.
I was a
But
high school dropout, so I don't have any input.
well, I had the course selection that I had didn't have room for art classes because I was also in marching band, I was in orchestra, I was in theater, so I didn't have the time in my schedule to take traditional art classes. I took art lessons from a local college, but technically those weren't high school art classes. So when I was hired to teach high school art, I kind of had to giggle because I'm like, I've never been on the other end of it. I'm sure that swayed my decisions on a few things because I didn't do it the way I was taught because I wasn't taught. I did it the way that I felt was best for the students. Yeah. Then when I got down to elementary art, it's been so long since I was in elementary art, but I do remember all of us having the same painting of like the same oil pastel pointillism drawing of the Sunday Afternoon by George Seurat. And we all had the same one. And why would you need, at that point, it would have been 60 of the
Yeah.
same thing.
Just reproducing, just making a product rather than a practice or a process.
Yeah, which, just let me play with the oil pastels. I bet you I could come up with something way more creative and less annoying than tiny little. The paper was like a 19 by or 14 by 19, something like that. It's huge, and we're making tiny little. That was just a exercise in insanity with third graders. Because you're going to make the third graders make tiny little dots over the whole thing.
They need to play because research also says play is such a huge factor in development, especially at that age. You need to let them explore and play, and that's going to help their dexterity to be more creative rather than try to reproduce a particular movement. Let them explore their movement, their kinesio sense.
Well, and, it's the argument that many times education is just preparing students to become workers that don't think, that don't have opinions of their own, that they just blindly follow what they're told to do. And I refuse to do that with my students. Need to go for a while. Hope to catch you later. Oh, thank you for coming. Talk programmer.
X Talk programmer, yeah. Another
Thanks.
fantastic educational streamer, by the way. Yeah, I think this has been fantastic. I completely agree. Great conversation.
Are there any other questions?
Anybody else have any
about
other questions
pigments?
for us? About pigments, yeah. We got off on a whole lot of great art discussions.
I mean, I am a very easily tangent, which my students do often. They get me talking about all sorts of stuff, and I'm like, but have we actually even done the thing we were going to do today? No? Okay, cool. But we spent an entire half hour talking about what to do in a lockdown. That was this week. They got me off on tangent, like, well, what if such and such? Please stop. Oh, Wes, thank you. I've enjoyed it too. They stopped selling something violet.
Gentian violet? Gentian?
I don't know that I've ever heard of that. Pardon me while I just some animal studies. Gentian. I am unfamiliar with that color.
It's also used as an antifungal. Topical gentian violet.
That sounds disgusting. Let's see. Let me look at the chromatopia. See if maybe that. They also call it methyl violet used in blue ink. Oh.
Not talking about methylene blue. That's a whole other can of worms to open up.
Probably turn out to cause most nose cancers, but when they use it on the mouth.
Yeah, methylene blue, that's a different issue. Although that will dye your brain blue.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Lovely. That sounds like so much fun. Not.
Some people seem to enjoy that possibility.
Okay, that is something I don't know much about.
Oh, yeah. It's a conspiracy theorist thing that it's kind of like a cure-all. Certain members of certain governments right now are high on it, dosing themselves with methylene blue, despite being in ostensibly positions of health and wellness influence.
Great. Sounds awesome. Supposed to protect my mitochondria. My mitochondria is able to protect itself. It does a good job. I don't know. I'm looking. Let's see here. I'm staying out of that political conversation. What was it again? Something.
Gentian.
Gentian blue. Okay. So it's not in that book either. I will have to look that up because I want to know more about animal studies of, because they have tried to go get more towards a vegan realm of pigments, but it is hard. Just because
it is used as a disinfectant. But yeah, looking at the color, it is a pretty bright, cool looking purple. I don't know if I would want to put it on or in my body, but
let's see here. Highlight, copy, pasta. Oh, haha. Oopsies. I did that wrong. Oh. An antiseptic. Used to create some types of fungus infections. Ew. Oh, because it can cause cancer. Yay.
Oh yeah, a lot of pictures of people dyeing their hair with gentian violet. Very
Might
pretty
not be the
flower.
best idea.
Probably not a good idea.
No. And that's another thing to think of, that just because something is natural does not mean it is safe. I mean, technically arsenic is natural, but it is not safe. Lead
Yeah.
is natural, but not safe. Um, Asbestos, natural, not safe. So, when people don't do their research and from reputable sources, and I'm going to say that specifically, reputable sources, a lot of damage can happen if you don't do your own research for yourself. I'm curious about that other one. The official name is crystal violet. Yikes. Okay, now I need to look up methylene blue. Methylene blue?
Methylene blue. Yeah.
Something tells me I'm not
The
going to be happy about the answer. Paste.
synthetic dye.
Search. Uh,
It does have some legitimate uses, but not the cure-all that some people seem to believe it does.
treating whoa.
Malaria
No,
or methylglobinemia.
yeah, sure, that one.
Methemoglobinemia. Yeah.
A
I
rare
don't have
blood
that, so
disorder.
I don't need to.
You don't need to know how to pronounce it. I have a feeling that it probably has an acronym. Oh, surgical visualization. Oh, cyanide poisoning. Antimalarial. So I wonder if well, probably not. Because I had to take malaria medication when I went to India. Kind of as a preemptive type of thing.
Prophylactic.
Yeah. But I also had to have like 5 shots before I could go to India. I do not remember, Maureen. It was 20 years ago now that I went to India. Oh, I'm sure it caused nightmares. There were a lot of things that caused nightmares when I went to India. That was not exactly it was not a vacation. We'll say that. Very educational, but not a vacation.
No. Methylene blue, brilliant dye as a textile dye, originally invented for, but no, don't dose yourself with random dyes. Since we're talking about pigments, don't just put pigments into your body.
No. And they've actually they've done a very good job of attempting to get some of the metals out of our pigments. Like cadmium is one that they've been trying to get the same brilliance and hue in these pigment colors, but without the metal. Not that it is the same level of hazard as lead, but it's not great. A lot of cool plant antioxidants or dyes, especially blue and purple. Plant. Yep. Well, I mean, the original purple did come from snail snot.
Yeah,
Gross.
a lot of the pigments have interesting histories that are just as colorful as they are.
Very much so. I mean, hence Vanta Black and Yinmin Blue, and there's just been a lot just as colorful. Yes, just as colorful. And it continues to the whole pigment environment has changed and is continuing to change. Because as for example, you were saying red dye. What number was there at number 5?
Yeah, one of those.
One of them is what is it? Is it illegal in California?
Yeah.
But it's not illegal in other states. What what's going on there? Why is it illegal for some of our country but not others? And is it illegal overseas? Do they know something that we haven't figured out yet, or that we aren't paying attention to? Or is it, I don't know, is it something that we need to, focus more on? Or is it something that we are being very overzealous about, overprotective, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, we really should be funding research into that kind of thing. I wonder why we're not doing that.
Well, wonder why they've cut funding all over the place. I was listening to NPR the other day, and I found myself getting incredibly frustrated at the thought, the fact that so much research funding has been cut off. And because and not for reasons that I personally find legitimate. I'm sure that someone finds them legitimate, but they haven't been able to convince me as to why it would be a good idea to stop research on eliminating childhood cancers. That just doesn't make sense to me. If we didn't have any money, like if we had bare bones nothing, then it might make sense. But we're one of the richest countries in the entire world. I used to say we were the richest country, but I still don't know if that's true. But one of the richest countries in the world, and we're cutting research funding for kids with cancer? Really? Like, can you find a group that is any more sensitive or sort of, I don't know, I'm so upset I can't think of words. Thank you. Vulnerable. Like, what are they going to do? They're going to fight back? They're going to use that funding against you? You're going to use that research against you? Like, sorry.
That is why it is so important to support education, and one of the reasons why we do what we do in trying to provide free educational live streaming and whatever topic that we have some knowledge or expertise in, to spread that for as many people as possible, especially if they can't get it wherever they are, for people to do their own research, but to learn it from people who have a little bit of insight or expertise, training, qualification, because there is also a lot of so-called educational stuff out there that is not so educational.
Yes,
well, I think we've had just an amazing conversation. I'm so glad we were able to have this very colorful conversation about pigments, and then a great conversation about art and education in general. I think that everyone, if you're watching, should go follow ArtsyChickadee on her Twitch channel. And of course, be following this channel here, because every month we will be having these seminars with a new educational streamer that we can spotlight, have these wonderful discussions, these sessions. Yeah, shout out to ArtsyChickadee. If you're not in the Discord for the Knowledge Fellowship, you should jump in there too. There will be a link in the chat shortly. I want to thank ArtsyChickadee before we head out into our little outro so much for joining us today, entertaining us and educating us. Sure that we will see you again soon, because we will be having roundtable discussions as well monthly on the TKF channel. There will be much more happening on this channel right here in the coming months. So happy to have all of the viewers here. Thank you so much for supporting educational, informative live streaming. Thank you so much, ArtsyChickadee. We will see you later.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who was watching and for all your good questions.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Maureen.